see, this is from you.
Welcome back to the Rantin Review Entertainment. It has been a while since I did a video on this channel, but I did want to talk about absolutely Stranger Things Season 4, both Volume 1 and Volume 2, do a review and a recap on this channel because, oh my god, this was amazing. And this is one of those experiences that I'm going to cherish and like look back on as far as me being a fan of TV and movies. And man, that was a fun time when I remember Stranger Things 4 came out and how fun that was to see it. There's one thing about those things is that once it's over with, you're kind of like, man, that was a great experience. But we're going to talk about it today. We're going to talk about some Easter eggs that were in there, some callbacks. We're going to talk about where I think Season 5 is going to go, and some things that you may or may not have picked up while you were watching the show. But before that, this being YouTube, YouTube loves its algorithm. So if you want to go send that thumbs up button into the upside down and turn it from black to blue or blue to black or however it works on your particular device, go ahead and hit that like button, give it a good old smack, send it to the upside down, and yeah, I definitely would appreciate it. It does help other fans of Stranger Things and movies know about this channel. So again, ahead of time, I thank you guys very much. So a quick recap, since I obviously have started this channel long after the Stranger Things started back in 2016. Stranger Things, I'm going to give you my history with it. I was at work, 2016, the people I work with were talking about this show. And usually when people buzz about a show, I kind of ignore it. But everybody kept saying, hey, you're going to really like this show. You're going to really like this show. And I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. I went home, it was a Thursday night, and I went home, and Season 1 of Stranger Things, I turned it on Netflix, and I did not stop watching the show until 4 o'clock in the morning. It was one of those shows, and this is always a sign of a good show. I did the same thing when I started watching The Wire many years ago, and I just couldn't stop watching the next episode and the next episode and the next episode. And that's the way it was with me in the first season of Stranger Things, and ever since then, I've been a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of all the callbacks. I'm a big fan of the way the Duffer Brothers write their storylines and the way they see things throughout it. It's kind of like this puzzle they're putting together. The cast has been phenomenal from top to bottom. Like everybody in the cast, from Mike and the kids and 11, even up to the parents, like the father, Mike's father, he's got his little one-liners, what I do, you know, every character on the show seems to fit their role very, very well. And some characters take off and I don't think there are too many characters. Well, there's one, well, not one, but 8, I should say. There is a character that didn't quite take off in the series, and for a series with this much screen time at the 4th season, for only having one character that most fans kind of didn't take to, that's kind of a good thing. So I absolutely love Season 1. Season 2 I thought was a good addition and a bookend to Season 1. Of course, the unfortunate thing with Bob, which is another thing about all of the characters and the actors that they get. The actors that they get are synonymous with 80s characters. And yes, Sean Astin is known as being Samwise Gamgee in The Lord of the Rings, but in the 80s, he was Rudy. He was obviously in Goonies. He was in a lot of stuff. So you knew that. You got Paul Reiser, who was synonymous with some 80s cult classics and Aliens and all this other stuff. The casting is so good. The themes are so good. Season 2 was good. It was a nice little bookend on the Season 1 with it all ending at the snowball dance. Season 3 was probably my least favorite, but I wouldn't say it's a bad season, but it seemed like things they may have been getting to the point where they might have been jumping the shark on it. The kids were getting older, so that kind of cute thing about, oh yeah, it's like Goonies. Well, you can't do that when the kids are like not 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old anymore, and now they're full-on teenagers. So the smart decision here is they just kind of ignored that, even though this Season 4 doesn't take place too long after Season 3, but the kids are noticeably older. But that led to them making a good decision as far as the theme of Season 4 being something totally different than what we saw before. So we've split up everybody in Season 4. We've got 11, Will, Jonathan, and they're out in California with Joyce trying to live their new life. We saw them leave at the end of Season 3. We find out that things aren't quite going so well for 11, who's now basically modeled her style after Joyce and her entire look after Joyce. But Mike is coming to town, so you know she's gonna feel better. He's leaving Hawkins to come out to California to visit her, and Will seems to be kind of like are you gonna tell Mike about the fact that you're not really popular and you're getting bullied? And you know, remember, 11 doesn't have her powers. She lost them at the end of season 3. So her being a normal girl just doesn't seem to be working out. She realizes that, in fact, yes, she is a nerd like the rest of her friends. Jonathan has befriended a stoner pizza delivery guy known as Argyle, who is great comic relief for this show. And he is, I mean, it's a very stereotypical stoner surfer character, man. It's like, yeah, which for a show that does pay a lot of homage to the 80s completely fits. And he's in there for the kind of, you know, the new edition this year. And every season of Stranger Things, they always add new people to the adventure, new people to the crew, whether it was Bob, some of them last, unlike Bob, or Dimitri, who didn't last, Billy, who came and went, and other characters. You know, you've had Murray that came in and he joined the adventure. Robin came in season 3, she joined the adventure. Erica, who is Lucas's sister, joined the adventure in season 2, and then a lot more in season 3, because again, that was another character that probably wasn't intended to be a bigger character, but people loved the actress's portrayal so much, she's become one of the crew. Argyle is one in this season, and there are a couple more I'm going to talk about as far as season 4 goes, but they're out there doing their thing. Jonathan has become a stoner, and that's how he's dealing with things, but him and Will are not quite together as much. They're not as close as they used to be. Will's made this painting, this big mysterious painting that, you know, that they didn't really show during the series, but then as we got near the end in volume 2, we did find out what that mysterious painting was. But the big thing was Mike coming to town and 11 kind of hiding the fact from him that things are not going quite so well for her. She's bullied by this particular group of kids. In fact, there's one particular blonde kid, because it's one of my criticisms of Stranger Things. They do kind of do the stereotypes with the bullies all the time. They're always blonde, beautiful people, are always the bad people, but that is what it is. It's the kind of story they're telling. They're telling a nerd story. So, of course, those are going to be the villains. So, 11, however, loses it. She tries to use her powers and forgets she doesn't have them. And it leads to a very embarrassing moment. And then they're at a skating rink in a scene straight out of Carrie. It's kind of an allusion to Carrie, I should say. And she hits the girl in the face with a skate, which is hella dangerous because she could have killed the girl. And that leads to 11 getting arrested and going to juvenile hall. And as all of this stuff is going on, all hell then breaks loose. Back in Hawkins, things are a little bit upheaval with the crew that's still there. Dustin is doing Dustin things. Him and Mike had joined a crew, the Hellfire Club, which is an homage to, probably with them more so, the X-Men characters, the X-Men crew, the Hellfire Club, which ironically enough has a lot to do with the Dark Phoenix saga and the Phoenix saga and Jean Grey. You know, 11's a lot like that character, so that's where that's all coming from. But the Hellfire Club is a Dungeons and Dragons club headed up by Eddie. And Eddie is a character that I didn't like the first couple scenes I saw him in. I'm like, oh god, this is one of these pretentious, you know, outclassed, I'm better than all of you kind of characters. But they quickly took him out of that and made him a much more well-rounded character, more of a three-dimensional character instead of just being that one-dimensional character. And Eddie, as the series went on, season 4, I have to think hands down, a lot of fans love Eddie, but he is the head of the Hellfire Club. Now, Lucas is part of the Hellfire Club, but Lucas is having some changes and coming of life things of his own. Lucas is now on the basketball team. He's got a high top fade, which is accurate for the period. I had one at the time too. And yeah, Lucas is getting the winning shot at the basketball game for the team, especially for the head of the team, Jason, who is this, again, an attractive blonde white kid. Of course, he's a bully. So he's in charge of the frat guys and the jocks or whatever. So Lucas has kind of gone over to the jock side. He can't even make the D&D game, but his sister Erica, amazingly enough, takes his spot, and Erica is absolutely wonderful, and she winds up winning. The Sinclairs wind up winning the day. Lucas wins the basketball game. Erica wins the D&D game, and all is right with the world. But it isn't, because the one person we're forgetting about here in the crew is Max. And Max, distant from Lucas, they've broken up almost for good, it seems, this time, and she's having a lot of emotional problems with what happened at the end of season 3 and the death of her stepbrother Billy. She's feeling a lot of guilt about this. She's seeing the school counselor, but she's also noticing that there's this other girl who's seeing the school counselor. She is the girlfriend of Jason, who's the head of the basketball team and the popular guy in the school. He's the new Steve Harrington. and he's taken over as the guy in charge. And it's it's kind of interesting how they did this, because Steve Harrington's character was originally supposed to be like this Jason character, but we saw Steve's character evolve. Not so much for this Jason character. His girlfriend, however, seeks out Eddie, who she knew from the past. She wants some drugs to she's having these really weird visions. Clocks are showing up. Strange things are happening. And at the end of episode 1, she goes to get some drugs, some Special K from Eddie, and things don't go right as she winds up floating in the air while she's having visions of deadites. Her bones break, her eyeballs get sucked out of her skull, and at that moment, we knew that Stranger Things had taken on a completely different tone. But that's not all that's going on. Joyce gets a letter from Russia, and as we all know, Hopper was in Russia, so Murray and Joyce embark on this journey because they're given this almost kind of a ransom letter, but not really. Well, it actually wound up being a ransom letter that says Hopper's alive and you can save him. So Joyce has to go get 40 grand and take it to this Russian named Yuri to go get Hopper back out of Russia. Hopper has his own plan out in Russia, which is probably I liked the Russia stuff with Hopper and what was going on there with him with the guards and how he kind of came back to being the Hopper we knew from season 1 to season 2. Hopper in season 3, I think they went too far with him kind of being goofy and like the grumpy dad, and the clueless grumpy dad, and they went too far with it, and he was making stupid jokes and stuff, and I didn't like Hopper. He felt like a different character. It felt like they went too far with it. Season 4, they return Hopper to who he is. He lost a lot of weight. Congratulations to David Arbor for losing all that weight. But he lost a lot of weight. Obviously, doing hard labor in a Russian prison will do that to you. And he concocts his plan to get out of Russia. And there we have it. Those are the multiple strands. There are actually 4 different threads going on in this series. 4 being a very significant number in season 4 of Stranger Things. The 4 paths we all thought were going to converge, and they do converge, but in a different way than they have in the past. The 4 different crews don't actually ever completely all meet up together until almost the very end of the show, of the season, I should say. That there's a lot of allusions there to Empire Strikes Back. There's a lot of Empire Strikes Back stuff in Stranger Things season 4. But as the stories go on and all 4 different paths kind of collide and converge, and some people come in and come out. 11 gets reunited with Papa in order to get her powers back. Mike and Will and Jonathan and Argyle go on this cross-country trek to get away after this awesome shootout fight that they have back at Joyce's place. Joyce, of course, is off with Murray, and they get captured and double-crossed by Yuri, who was an obnoxious character, but I actually grew to like him later on in the series, in the season. They wind up getting involved with that whole thing with Hopper, and Hopper's got to face off against a Demogorgon. Meanwhile, we got the whole crew back in Hawkins, which is the bulk of the crew. Lucas and Max and Nancy and Robin and Steve, all of them, and along with Eddie, trying to keep Eddie out of trouble because Jason has blamed Eddie and his satanic cult of Dungeons and Dragons followers for the murder of his girlfriend, the murder of another kid that was in town. And we all know, however, the real culprit of this is not Eddie, it's the new villain, Vecna. Now, to go through all the stuff that happened in the show, it would just take forever, but ultimately we wind up in volume 2 with all of the things that happened in episodes 1 through 7 in volume 1 coming to a head. Hopper and Joyce and Murray, they have their final conclusion in Russia. We do get 11 getting her powers back. We have a lot of allusions to conflict between some of these love triangles. One of those triangles is involving Steve, Jonathan, and Nancy, as Jonathan is out in California, and Nancy's kind of like, why didn't you come back? He's kind of lying to her about college. He's kind of avoiding a lot of people and kind of hiding in weed. Meanwhile, Steve and Nancy kind of warming up to each other again, kind of somewhat rekindling their relationship, but not all the way. But Nancy does know that Steve is a lot different and has grown since then. The other one is a little bit more subtle, which is 11, Mike, and yes, Will. They frame a lot of shots, if you notice in the series, with you see 11 and Mike, and then in the background between the two of them is Will watching them on. And now we're going to get into this, some of the things that you may or may not have noticed. I did notice some people didn't notice this, but I think most people kind of assumed that Will was gay. and we're really seeing it now in season 4. Will has a couple of scenes that are really heartbreaking. The one in particular where he's trying to explain to Mike that 11 does need him. He's kind of talking about himself, trying to not reveal to Mike that he's got feelings for him. But we also kind of see that Mike kind of knows that. From the very beginning, Mike is kind of standoffish to Will. And that whole scene where Will just turns his... I mean, I think everybody's done this, where you're talking to somebody else and you're trying to hide the fact that what you just did took all of you, took everything you had, and you're trying not to break down and cry, but you can't. It's so painful. He was just hiding, and oh my God. I think everybody can feel that scene. And then, of course, Jonathan noticed it, and Jonathan knows what's going on. And then we have the issue of Max and Lucas having a lot of problems with Max kind of pushing him away, but he also kind of pulled away because he wanted to be a popular kid, which that storyline was kind of hammy to me about, you know, I don't want to be a popular kid anymore. You know, I want to be a nerd. I mean, Stranger Things, yes, is a show about nerds, but they do go a little heavy-handed on it sometimes, but it's not to the point where you're going to dislike the show. The show is phenomenal, but, you know, every show has this sometimes where they go... that's a little bit much there, but it's not a major part of the show, so it was pretty cool. But the big thing was Max and Lucas trying to rekindle their relationship as well. Doesn't go quite so well. But when it's all said and done, 11 gets her powers back. She is able to somewhat stop Vecna, but things do go awry. And this is where I'm going to talk about some of the callbacks and some of the hidden Easter eggs and stuff in the story. One of them, again, as I said before, is the theme of season 4, which is this year, A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I think this was a good call because, yes, they're not kids anymore, so the theme isn't so much Goonies or E.T. or stuff like it's been in the past. With them being teenagers now, it was good to go with what are you going to do? What was popular in the 80s with teenagers and horror? Horror films, the slasher films, Friday the 13th, Halloween, all of those films, but in particular, the biggest influence seemed to be A Nightmare on Elm Street. In particular, the first 4. And you see this all throughout it. Obviously, the biggest one is obviously Robert Englund playing the father of Vecna, Victor Creel, and that cameo scene that he had in the prison where he talked about what happened with his son, and we got some clues hinted to us as to what was going on. But you also had the fact that, you know, there's something very blatant when Nancy goes into the weird mind world of the Upside Down inside of Vecna's head. He says, well, as soon as he says Nancy, I immediately went, oh yes, that's right. And the Nightmare on Elm Street 1, the girl's name was Nancy, and Nancy's character does seem to be very much based off of Heather Langenkamp's Nancy character from the Nightmare on Elm Street series. There's also a little bit there from Nightmare on Elm Street 2, which a lot of people realize in hindsight was a lot about coming out. So there's a whole thing with Will coming out, Nightmare on Elm Street 2. It was very much hinted at, but never fully blatantly said that the main character was a gay male. And then obviously Nightmare on Elm Street 3 with the Dream Warriors, and Nightmare on Elm Street 4 with the Dream Master, that probably being 11, as Alice was in Nightmare 4, 11 is in this series. Plus the whole character of Vecna himself being the first articulate villain in the Stranger Things series. He's able to articulate. They even gave him like a claw hand, kind of like Freddy Krueger's knives. He's all kind of burned up and scarred up. There was obviously a lot of nods to that there. Eddie playing a heavy metal concert, you know, it was straight up Dokken Dream Warriors vibes I got from Eddie's concert in the Upside Down. But it wasn't only a Nightmare on Elm Street that was alluded to. You also had some allusions to Halloween, obviously with the mask that Eddie had to wear when they were trying to escape in the trailer park and steal the RV, and he didn't want his face to be seen. He wore the Michael Myers mask, which was the same mask that Max wore in season 2 on Halloween. And then the one thing that some people might have missed is when the teens, the trio of Robin, Steve, and Nancy go and shoot and take out Vecna in the Upside Down. They shoot him through the window. He falls out down to the ground out of his childhood home, and when they go down and look, he's gone. That is straight up right out of the book, the ending from Halloween 1, which we all remember. When Dr. Loomis shot Michael, he fell out of the window, and when Loomis looked, Michael was gone. Another one they pretty much kind of almost completely ripped off, very obviously, was the whole scene when they go to see Victor Creel, ironically enough, Freddy Krueger's character, Nancy and Robin go down the hallway very much like we saw Clarice Starling, almost beat for beat from Silence of the Lambs when she goes to meet Hannibal Lecter. There's a couple of Jaws references with them being out on the lake and Steve getting pulled under. There's a whole video, there's a ton of references in the video store that Robin and Steve work at in the first couple episodes. They're all over the place. You know, Fast Times at Ridgemont High references. There's a Freddy Krueger poster in the background. There's all kinds of stuff going on there. Cheech and Chong references, which is also along with Argyle's character. And let's get to the Star Wars one. We couldn't be without Star Wars references in Stranger Things. Of course, there's the early one where Dustin says, "Never tell me the odds," which is a quote from Han Solo. Also, Murray does give a quote, "I got a bad feeling about this," which is a legendary Star Wars quote. But one that I think a lot of people may not have picked up on, Stranger Things Season 4 is very much the Empire Strikes Back of the Stranger Things series. Much like Empire, they're kind of separated, the crew's separated. 11 is going off to kind of deal with her own Obi-Wan and Yoda thing in a weird way with the two doctors, one being good, one being evil. It's kind of like she was talking to the Emperor with Papa, and with the other doctor, Paul Reiser's character, he was kind of like the Yoda, and they were kind of trying to mentor 11 to get back to who she was. They even get to the point, which is much like Empire Strikes Back, where Obi-Wan and Yoda are trying to tell Luke, you know, hey, if you're going there, it's a trap. Your friends are in trouble. They might need your help, but you're not ready. And it's the same thing that happened here with 11, which 11 knew her friends were in trouble. She wanted to help them, but Yoda and Obi-Wan kept telling her she wasn't ready. And yes, there's tons more references and Easter eggs throughout the series, but I do want to talk now about how the show ended and what we can expect for the future, or at least what I am assuming it might be happening in the next year or two when Stranger Things Season 5 eventually comes out. Of course, like I mentioned before, the love triangles. I'm very curious how they're going to wrap up the storylines in the love triangle with Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan, as the tide has kind of swung back into Steve's favor now. So I'm curious to see how they're going to do and what they're going to do with that. I'm curious about when Will is going to come out and how they're going to resolve the fact that Will has feelings for Mike, but Mike is with 11, and 11 is, for all intent and purposes, Will's stepsister. And Will get a romantic relationship. He's not the only gay character in the crew. Robin, of course, is a gay character. She came out to Steve when it looked like they were going to have a relationship with Steve. And I kind of wondered if she had just said that to kind of misdirect that she really did like Steve. But upon watching Season 3 again, I was like, oh no, she actually is gay. And we find out completely in Season 4, she does have a crush on yet another redhead. This show does love the redheads, and so do I, so I'm not complaining. But Robin had this issue, this kind of subplot story, but it had a great resolution at the end of Season 4. Steve even cracking up when Robin is talking to her crush, and it turns out that they're exactly the same people, and that maybe this girl is crushing on Robin a little bit too. So are those two going to be a pair? Well, it looks like they're going to be a pair now going forward, and that's going to be the new kind of trio, I guess, is Steve with Robin and her girlfriend. That should be pretty cool, and to see how that translates into other things with the rest of the teenagers. Dustin, I think Dustin's leg injury, remember Dustin has a bone disease, so him hurting his leg and having that limp now, I think that's going to play out into the future. And I'm also wondering, now that he's agreed to carry on for Eddie in the real world, with Eddie giving his big sacrifice, Dustin did go talk to Eddie's uncle and say, hey, you know, even though everybody's blaming him for this, he actually was a hero. It's not his fault, and he died trying to save the town, the very town that hated him. He still died for it. So I'm wondering if they're going to bring the uncle back in Season 5 as a big character along with Dustin. And I expect of all characters, there's going to be a lot of big changes to Dustin's character going forward. How that's going to manifest with Dustin and how he's going to change as a character, that's one thing I really want to see when we get to Season 5. Probably the most shocking thing that happened after Eddie's death which immediately happened after Eddie's death, was that whole running up the hill thing in episode 4, where we're like, all right, she survived, she made it. She's back in there again, and you keep thinking, oh, she already went through it. They're not gonna kill her. They're not gonna do it. And then Max's arm it was like kind of a nightmare that you were kind of hoping wasn't gonna happen. You're like, oh, what if that did happen? But they're not gonna do that. And then when they started doing it, and her bones started breaking, and her arms and legs and her eyeballs went white, I was like, they're Why? What? And truth be told, Max does die. She does die in Lucas's arms. By the way, that scene ripped my heart out. And even him calling Erica, like, Erica, help, and blah, blah, blah. Eleven's in the Upside Down watching it through her visions, and she's seeing Max die. And Max's death, of course, which is the one that was the fourth one that Vecna needed. Okay, remember, 4 is a big number in this season, led to the 4 gates opening up, thus destroying, pretty much destroying Hawkins, opening up a gate and merging Hawkins with the Upside Down. 11, however, said, nope, not going to accept that. I'm going to do a redo, reset, hit continue. She puts her hand on Max's heart, restarts Max's heart, but, you know, the question is that really good? Because Max is now in a coma with multiple broken bones, and apparently she's going to be blind. So I don't think it's the end of Max. I think some episode in season 5 is going to end with Max's eyes opening up. Probably to that Kate Bush song again, but I do expect that Max could come back. Now, how Max is going to come back? Is she going to be crippled? Is she going to be blind? Is she even going to be conscious? That's a big question that we want to have answered in season 5. I'm not too sure what's going to happen with the adults, though. I guess we're going to see the relationship between Joyce and Hopper finally now take off. Where Murray fits into this, where our new Russian friends fit into this in season 5, I'm not so sure. But remember, at the end of season 4, the Upside Down is now merging with Hawkins in the real world. And now, given the fact that we do know that there's going to be a time jump from 1986 to whatever year that season 5 is set in, whether it's 1989 or they even move it into the 90s, there's going to be a time jump. So they're going to live with the Upside Down and Hawkins being merged for maybe a year, at the least up to 3 years. What is it going to look like when we get Stranger Things season 5? I get a sense that it's going to be a totally different world. We can't really even concept and imagine what Hawkins, what our characters are going to be involved with coming up in season 5. But overall, again, season 4 of Stranger Things, I think, when volume 1 ended, I was like, if they stick the landing on this, it might be my favorite season. And not only did they stick the landing, they had a perfect landing with the finale of season 4 of Stranger Things. So it is now officially my favorite season. It has leapfrogged season 1. So my favorites are now, season 4 is my favorite, season 1 is my second favorite, then season 2, and at the bottom is season 3. And again, season 3 isn't terrible, but it just, the show seemed to have hit kind of a benchmark and got close to jumping the shark a little bit. It needed this Nightmare on Elm Street reset for season 4. In fact, I will say season 4 of Stranger Things is probably the best version of Nightmare on Elm Street since Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4. But those are my thoughts on it. I want to know what you guys think in the comment box below. Let your voice be heard. Did you watch Stranger Things season 4? Do you think it's the best season? Where do you rank it? What do you think about the ending? What do you think about what happened to Max? Who were your favorite characters? What do you hope to see going forward in the future? All kinds of questions. What other references do you think they should make to 80s films that they haven't made yet? There's plenty of other 80s films that they could probably reference in season 5, which will be officially the final season of Stranger Things. And I think that's a good thing for them to wrap it up with 5 seasons. It's going to feel nice and tidy, and it'll be a fun thing to binge watch a couple years in the future once the whole series is complete. I think Stranger Things is going to go down as probably one of the best cultural movie, TV shows, streaming shows, whatever you want to call these things now, of this last decade or so. But again, let your voice be heard about that in the comment box below. Until then, if you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe button, and the notification bell. And be sure to share this video on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or wherever you talk about Stranger Things, Netflix shows, streaming shows, creepy stuff, nerdy stuff, the 80s, or whatever. I'll see you guys here for more news, rumors, and reviews here on the Rantin Review Entertainment. Have a good day.